Arman Tsarukyan has recently gone from a hated Brokeback Mountain food influencer to a much less hated Brokeback Mountain food influencer. And honestly, over the last 7 years that I've spent watching the UFC, I don't think I've seen a greater comeback than this. No, not in the way of fighting, because he still can't get a title fight, but in the way of popularity. So today I'll be giving you Arman Tsarukyan's complete timeline from the very beginning to the hated spoiled rich kid who pulled out of the Islam fight to the now popular and loved spoiled rich kid who pulled out of the Islam fight. Let's begin! So believe it or not, I was originally a huge Arman Tsarukyan fan. There was in fact a point in time where I didn't want to see his downfall. There was a point in time where I didn't want to see him stub his big toe on every coffee table in sight. Hell, there was even a point in time where I didn't pray daily for him to stain those really nice expensive clothes while eating those fucking burgers. You see, back in the day when Arman debuted into the UFC, he put on a performance that shocked me and fans all around the world. He even made me fall in love with grappling. You see, up to this point in time in 2016, I'd yet to see many grappling fighters that really made me excited. I'd barely seen any grapplers who made me not want to turn off the TV. Hell, even now today, I don't think I've seen grappling exchanges of this caliber and of this pace. And this was in Arman's debut. How could you not fall in love with him? Think about it. Arman Tsarukyan's debut. He has to fight Voldemort himself, the destroyer of JDM, the half-guard terrorist himself. Arman did that whilst being 22 years old. And to top it off, it was on short notice. And it was his debut. But hang on a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself. I said I would give you Arman Tsarukyan's complete timeline. So let's start this a little further back. Let's start this in Georgia. It was the year of 1996, and the world was beautiful. At this time in the mid-90s, there were no mobile phones, no extreme social anxiety. It was just blessed times. And believe it or not, there was a lot going on. I mean, we had the creation of Beanie Babies, the Spice Girls were singing Wannabe, and of course, most importantly, we had the birth of Arman Tsarukyan. Arman was born in a small town in Georgia near the Armenian border. He was born into an Armenian family consisting of his mother, father, older brother, and eventually a younger sister. Arman's stay in Georgia only lasted for 3 years after his family relocated to Russia seeking better opportunities. This is where Arman Tsarukyan's father became involved in construction, where he would later become very successful. And fun fact, Arman's family wasn't always wealthy. Despite perceptions online that Arman Tsarukyan grew up rich, interviews with his family and himself emphasized more of a modest upbringing. The wealth would come later on in life. According to Arman's older brother, they struggled enough that they couldn't even afford wrestling shoes in childhood. Now, quick interjection, Arman's brother, are we talking about the gold-plated, jewel-encrusted, top-of-the-line wrestling shoe? Or are we talking about the hand-me-down Dagestani shoes? Actually, I don't think those guys even have shoes. Anyway, moving back to Arman's story, believe it or not, Arman Tsarukyan was always athletic. Believe it or not. I mean, look at this motherfucker. Of course he was athletic. The first thing he did when he came out of the womb was probably that guillotine escape that we saw from the last fight. Now, not only did Arman do freestyle wrestling as a youth, he also played hockey all through his teenage years. And before ever wanting to be a pro in MMA, he first wanted to be a pro in hockey. But you see, as Arman entered adulthood, he had a look at himself and he thought, hold on. I'm a genetic freak. I need to make use of this and switch up on all my dreams and passions right now. And shocker, he was good at it. Arman come to find that he was exceptionally talented at wrestling and grappling, and so he decided to pursue this talent even further and utilize this to move forward in his MMA career. And so this is where Arman started competing in amateur mixed martial arts. During this time, Arman won multiple grappling and wrestling tournaments as an amateur. And these wins spawned an idea into young Arman's brain.
I'm a beast, brother. Time to go smash professionals.
But Arman would soon learn that the professional scene was no joke. In fact, it wouldn't be so easy to smash at all. Although Arman would go on to win his first pro fight, he recalled in an interview with Mighty Mouse recently that it didn't go how he thought, and he opened up and reflected on how truly terrifying it was.
But when I went there and I saw the cage, I said, no way, I gotta fight here. I was scared.
Yeah.
I was so scared, and I said, what about if I lose? What about if someone knocked me out? Yeah, I was scared, and then I started, and then I understood, like, I gotta do amateur fights. And I started doing amateur fights. I became a
So you went pro and then you
pro,
went back
and
to
then
amateur.
back to amateur.
That's right, that's how backwards Arman's brain was. Not only did he first debut as a professional instead of an amateur, he went out there with only grappling, all whilst being shit scared, and only come to the realization afterwards that he should probably put some skill points in something other than grappling. And so after a quick training arc in the hyperbolic time chamber, Arman went on a tear and built a dominant record in the Russian and Asian regional circuits, going 13-1 before eventually getting a call from the Bald Man. And this was a call that would change his life. You see, Arman, just like everyone else pre-UFC, was quite unknown. But soon all of that would change for Arman when he would have one of the best ever UFC debuts I've ever seen. Now, believe it or not, this wasn't the fight that actually got Arman in the spotlight for fans. That would come years down the track. But hold on, we'll get there. Stop fucking rushing me. You see, Arman's popularity isn't mainly from fighting. It's from his social media. Wait, hold on. We can't just go straight to the end again. We have to go backwards in time first. So we're at the Islam fight. It's April 20th, 2019, and Arman's just debuted on short notice against Islam Makhachev. Yes, he loses by decision, but during this fight, he stuffs a lot of takedowns and gives us some of the best scrambles we've ever seen. Hell, even Islam was probably shitting bricks when he come up against a wrestler of this caliber. Now, yes, he did gain a good chunk of fan support from this. You know, watchers of the sport who watch weekly, not monthly, not through TikTok. And yes, he did lose here, but he won in many other ways. And so in 2019 and 2020, Arman would have what I like to call a prospect hype phase, similar to what we're seeing now with an equivalent of like a Quillan Salkild from Australia. Sorry, I had to get Aussie glaze in here somehow. In this period, he had 3 wins back to back to back. 2 by dominant decision and 1 by KO. And again, at this time period, it's important to note that Arman had no hate. Next to none anyway. Someone's always hating. But also in this same time period, he wasn't hugely popular. Now, it started to change a little bit coming into 2021. This is where Arman became more noticed by the hardcore fans. But honestly, for Arman, it was probably a time he wants to forget the most. In 2021, Arman had his first ever reality check when he lost to someone most thought he should beat, Mateusz Gamrot. Now, yes, this was a close and competitive fight between the two, but it was still another loss to add to Arman's UFC resume. This is where Arman started to get his first real criticism. People at the time were saying that he looked less urgent and looked less dominant than they expected. Either way, Arman obviously has the skill to go up against the elite, but in this fight, Gamrot just used his crafty experience to out-hustle him. But fast forwarding from here and entering 2022, Arman knew he needed to make a change. Slowly he continued his training arc, and slowly he was leveling up with the mindset of becoming a complete martial artist. Now, while all this was happening slowly but surely, Arman made his way up the rankings in the UFC, and he also made it up the rankings in the minds of UFC fans. And now let me ask you this. What is the best way to be remembered by UFC fans? By posting pictures of sports cars? What? No. Posting videos of eating burgers? No, not that either. What I'm talking about is violence Oh, okay. So headbutting people at the weigh-ins? Oh, for fuck's sake. In 2022, Arman had 2 fights. A decision win over Damir Ismagulov, and a brutal TKO win over Joel Alvarez. This was the type of violence that made me as a fan think, hold on, this isn't just some wrestler who's gonna hold someone down and pin them in half guard. He's not gonna ruin my favorite fighter over 5 rounds and make me cry and make me think about quitting YouTube and make me have nightmares. No, this guy is different. He's athletic, and he scrambles, and he has destructive ground and pound. This guy is the future. But still, at the same time, we hadn't seen much personality from Arman himself. So something had to change. As we know, yes, this sport is full of talented, hardworking athletes. But to make it as a superstar in the UFC, you need to have that and also a little bit of this. You see this? This is shit talking. You need a lot of it. And this is where Arman started his villain phase. In 2023, Arman beat down Silva, and he started showing us more of his cocky, arrogant, and I guess confident side in interviews.
I'm ready to fight for 15 minutes, and I know, like, this time I don't want to give judges to decide it who is going to be win. I want to finish this guy. I want to, like, knock him out or choke him. Doesn't matter. Just, like, stop him.
Arman was slowly getting into the eyes of the larger fan base, and soon he'd have a breakout moment that would send him rocketing into the well-known spaces of MMA fandom. Enter beloved Benny Dariush. Benny has some great wrestling and scrambling, and I and many fans tuned into this fight to see some Islam Arman-esque wrestling exchanges. But instead we got a 1-round death TKO of one of our favourite fighters. Well, that's not what I expected. Rest in peace, Benil. And from here, Arman was enemy number 1 in the fans' eyes. Yes, we love knockouts, but we don't love seeing our favourites get knocked out. Similar to how Ilya is a villain because he keeps knocking out all of our favourite fighters. Oh, sorry, that's spoilers. That's from 2024. Oh, fuck. Anyway, back on track. Arman had a huge jump in popularity here. And no, not just because he smashed a top 5 lightweight. No. Over the years, whilst all this fighting was happening, Arman happened to crack his niche. The niche of ordering way too much food and pretending that you're going to eat it all. And at the same time, it needs to be in front of an exotic car and or a jet. Arman bundled all this up, put it together in a package, and found the new hack for going viral. This plus the Benil knockout was now festering. It was marinating hate from people all through the MMA fandom. Hell, lots of them come from outside the UFC fandom. Everyone was slowly beginning to know the name of Arman Tsarukyan. But now if you thought flexing a privileged life and knocking out Benil Dariush was the fastest and best way to gain popularity or hate, you'd be extremely wrong. Arman had an even better idea. Enter Charles Oliveira. Charles is probably one of, if not the most beloved character in the UFC. Not only is he never in boring fights, he also came from nothing and had one of the best title runs of all time. Charles' story is truly inspiring, and he is one of the most lovable characters of all time. And so what did Arman do to Oliveira that put him on everyone's hate list? Well, he would do something that no UFC fan likes to see. That's right, he did the unspeakable. He won a close decision against him. Oh, how could you? Split decision or not though, beating Charles Oliveira is a big no-no. Everybody knows that. But still, to be fair to Arman, it was obvious that he was close to being the best lightweight fighter in the world. And soon, no one would be able to deny him from the biggest moment of his life. No one. Except for maybe Nina Drama. The skill level in MMA is crazy, and it's a crazy sport. Only the best of the best ever, even with cherry picking of fights, can make it to a title fight. And after a win over Charles Oliveira, a former title holder, Arman had secured a much deserved title shot and a much deserved rematch against Australia's Voldemort, Islam Makhachev. Arman had worked his whole career with this redemption fight in his mind. He had beaten many great fighters along the way, he'd built up his social media, he'd gained fans, haters, and all of this had been done whilst being in this man's shadow. But soon, it would all change. Finally, Arman would get his chance to fight for the 155-pound title. With his training camp out of the way and finished, all Arman had to do was wrap up his media obligations and get ready for the Islam fight. But this is where Arman would make an extremely wrong decision. A decision that would come with the most hate he'd ever faced so far. That's right. He interviewed with Nina Drama.
Did you ever see the comments under the video of me and Alex? On the floor outside. That's a full circle moment. LeBron James.
Now, interviewing with Nina Drama alone isn't such a bad thing. I think Nina does a really good job at bringing out the fun side of fighters and getting them to show a little bit more of their personality. This and, well, making you feel like her boyfriend's a cuck. She does that really well also. The Nina Drama interview itself wasn't exactly what caused the hate. What caused the hate was what happened inside the interview that then led to the destruction of my most hyped title fight of the year. Arman in this interview would flirt with Nina, show off his wrestling tricks, and give off 16-year-old me vibes doing backflips into the pool. And now attention whoring like this isn't such a bad thing. We all do it from time to time. We all want to be noticed for the things that we're good at. Hell, that's just human nature. But do you know what's not human nature? Do you know what's absolutely despicable and bordering the line of a war crime? Ruining the first most anticipated fight of a UFC year. Because on January 18th, 2025, Arman would tell UFC staff that he's not making weight due to a back injury. And because of this, Arman could not fight Islam Makhachev. And with this, you and I were no longer ever going to see the best fight the best. Instead, us fans of the sport would go on to watch Moicano versus Islam, the most dangerous and entertaining fight of the... No, it was shit. It wasn't competitive at all. Horrible main event. Padding of Islam's resume. And not Islam's fault. Arman's fault. This was one of the most lackluster title defenses I've ever seen. And as you can imagine, the fans were in full support of Arman and his sore back. You know, injuries happen from time to time. It's a rough sport. These fighters put themselves on the line for us. No! Fuck you! The fans are in full hate mode. I'm in hate mode. This spoiled little fuck ruined everything. I fucking... Oh, sorry. I think I have a bit of trauma from that event. But the damage had been done, not only to my soul and my heart, but also Arman Tsarukyan's back and to the ego of Renato Moicano. So yeah, it was safe to say that Arman really shat the bed. And honestly, he deserved all the hate coming his way. But really, it just hurt him more than anyone else. Not only did Arman lose his opportunity to fight Islam for the belt, he also would be sent to the Shadow Realm by the UFC. He was now in the naughty books of Dana White. Arman would no longer be fighting or progressing his UFC career anytime soon. Bad boy, go to your room. Fast forwarding a little bit now, Arman would go on to be skipped by the UFC for not only the Islam fight, but then would be skipped for the Ilya vs. Charles fight for Islam's soon-to-be vacated belt. Shit had hit the fan in the worst way for the UFC. Us fans were dying. Someone picked up a huge steamy poo and threw it into the fan of the UFC, and us fans were underneath it, ready to take it all. This was truly the darkest time as an MMA fan that I had over the last 6 or 7 years. We lost potentially some of the best fights of all time. The UFC was still doing dog shit Apex cards, and we weren't getting to see the best fight the best. There was even talks of Yair versus Volk. It was a horrible time. And so as you can imagine, all the hate that came Arman's way was pretty warranted. And Arman was now a well-known name. But not in a good way at all. Kind of in a Jake Paul kind of way. Kind of like a 2012 Justin Bieber kind of way. He was definitely in the bad books with the UFC and also with us fans. But Arman, he took this with a grain of salt because he doesn't need to fight. He's rich. And not only that, he had a plan. Instead of apologizing and groveling to the UFC and fighting the fights that they wanted him to fight, he would do none of that. Instead, he would go do some random grappling tournaments. Genius! Write that down. As I said, you see, Arman has plenty of money. Other fighters need to get back in the octagon and do their job so they can pay their bills and support their family. Arman doesn't have to do any of that. So the last thing he's doing is groveling at the feet of the UFC. Arman would simply wait around until he found a fight that he liked. Gamrot redemption match? Nah. Arman, yeah, he knew his worth. It was either title eliminator or nothing. And this would continue for a long time. Actually, it would go on for all of 2025. And I'ma keep it real. I hated you, Arman, in this period. Hate. I don't even hate that many UFC fighters. Maybe like Ian Gary. That's the level you were on. Ian Gary was here. You're right there with him. I've gone out there. So not only did Arman ruin the start of the year, he had this horribly arrogant personality to go along with it. These two things paired with a bunch of money and seemingly no care to fight anyone anytime soon really had me hate watching him like a demon. But just over this shit hill that Arman had created would soon spawn a rainbow of hope. Arman might not have been the most loved character at this time, but he sure was one of the most talked about. And not only that, he was also still the most skilled and deserving of a title shot. Title shot? No. Best I can do is Paddy Pimblett versus Justin Gaethje. Arman once again had his plans foiled. Not only was he not getting his deserved title shot, he'd also have to watch two even more undeserving people fight for the interim title. But little did Arman know, this situation might have just been the best thing to ever happen to him. This very situation that at first seemed like complete bunghole would actually be the reason that you and I witnessed the greatest comeback in UFC history when it comes to popularity. This is the resurrection of Arman Tsarukyan.
He is the #1 contender, in my opinion.
You not only win the fight though,
division.
you dominated
He's the pride
that.
of
Did
Armenia,
you know you would beat
Georgia,
him up
Russia,
in that way where
South
you
Florida.
confident that you could dominate him in the way that you
Arman
did?
Tsarukyan is actually...
Arman went on a media tour that was bigger than the UFC fighters that were actually fighting on UFC 324. Arman made more news and gained more views than any UFC fighter currently in the spotlight. And slowly but surely we would see that hate that had been festering for Arman turn to love. Slowly we as fans got to sit there and be with Arman and see his personality for who he is. And honestly, Arman's just a fun guy. Timing of jokes, sense of humor, horniness, his views on the UFC, trolling people, and the energy that he brings to interviews. Arman had now become this genuinely charismatic and fun character. And honestly, he was probably always like this. We just didn't give him the chance. Anyone who goes against the grain of the UFC generally has a lot of support from the fans, myself included. And anyone who's going to stand up against the goofball matchups, Dana White's constant lack of attention and care, and of course the worst crime, not putting on the best of the best fights. Anyone who's going to go up against that has me on their side. All of this mixed in with now Arman's well-known personality had fans converting to the church of Arman Tsarukyan. Before we didn't know who he was, and he ruined my year. But now after listening to 20 hours plus of Arman Tsarukyan at work while I pulled electrical cables through the roof, I'm starting to enjoy him as a character. And Arman, I forgive you. Anyway, this whole situation has made Arman Tsarukyan one of the most popular fighters in UFC right now. From his extravagant lifestyle, to his trolling, to his great fighting ability, to now his media run. Arman is becoming well known in every single facet needed to become a star in MMA. And now the UFC has to take action. The UFC has to give Arman his well-deserved title shot, and if they don't, at least give us Arman versus Paddy. Give us some memes, give us some shit talk. And honestly, I do like Arman. As I said, I forgive you, Arman, for the pain that you put me through. But from your first fight in the UFC, I was amazed at how you could turn grappling into something that's genuinely entertaining. We all make mistakes and ruin everyone's year every now and then. I'm excited for your next fight. Hopefully UFC doesn't keep screwing you over, and hopefully soon we get to see the best versus the best. Guys, thank you very much for staying all the way to the end of the video. If you're new here, don't forget to smash the shit out of the subscribe button and my anus. and the like button. Just smash it all while you're there. This video is shaping up to be extremely long. My eyes are burning. I just worked all day and I feel like I've been squinting for the last half of the video. But again, thank you very much for your support. I appreciate everyone who supports my videos. There'll be a new one soon coming out. If you like my videos, check out one of these ones here. Or is it this side? Wherever I put it. And I'll see you soon for a new one. Peace out.